So welcome, revelers. Thank you for prioritizing the gift of self-care today and tuning into one of Revel 11's annual Summer of Love events. I'm Janet Stevenson. I'm privileged to know the amazing and audacious Joni Parsons and Monica Smith, the co-founders of Revel 11, and to call them very dear friends. Neither of them can be here today, as they're living their values and both off on various adventures of their own. But I'm very grateful to participate on Revel 11's advisory board and be here to represent them today. Joni and Monica have a way of knowing exactly what we as women might need and when we need it. So as I recently committed to making this my best decade yet, I think it's no coincidence that they've invited me to welcome the incredible Levine to hear her guidance on embracing the 50s and beyond with audacity and verve.
Hey, everybody.
Lisa is a certified life and health coach at Audacious Health and Wellness. She helps women who are approaching midlife to create new and healthy habits in the way we think, eat, sleep, and move, empowering us to live our lives fully and audaciously. I love that she finds comfort in being reminded that the only constant in life is change, and how that stems from her deeply rooted belief that ultimately everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. Lisa has captured her liberating philosophy in Midlife No Crisis, an audacious guide to embracing 50 and beyond. And I'm absolutely thrilled to invite Lisa to walk us through some of the key tenets of her guide and answer some of your questions that she will sure to provoke along the way. So please post your questions in the chat, and after the main body of Lisa's presentation, we'll aim to answer and engage with you as many as we can. You'll also see a few questions posed to you along the way, so do look out for them. We're excited to hear and learn from you too. Lisa.
Yes.
Take it away.
Thank you so much, Janet. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here, and so that you can see what I got for you. Hang on one second. Oh, we're going to go backwards. That's step 2. We don't want to do that. Okay, here we go. So welcome to Summer of Self-Love with Revel 11, a roadmap for an audacious midlife. So first of all, why audacious? So audacious is defined as, among other things, showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. And it's marked by originality and verve. And some of the synonyms of audacious include plucky, brave, daring, courageous, intrepid. So you're getting the theme there. Basically, our personal definitions of what audacious means to us may vary, but the theme remains the same, which is to show up, try new things that sometimes make you feel uncomfortable at first, and forge a path that feels fulfilling, fascinating, fun, and fabulous, and of course, audacious. So let me go here. All right. So I am, as Janet said, I'm a certified life and health coach, and I'm the author of Midlife No Crisis. I'm also a mom and of 2 kids who are in their early 20s, a wife, and I live in my 50s, living my most audacious life. I'm actually just turned 58, so I'm following all my own advice. So what is midlife anyway? So midlife can feel like a crisis because it's kind of like all the rules start changing all at once without any warning. And as a life coach and somebody who's been there, done that through the change and all of that, I prefer to think of midlife as more of a meltdown than a crisis. And it's kind of like with the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, it's really a time of transformation. And reformation as well. So this particular midlife meltdown really happens in our heads and in our bodies. And it can be triggered by anything ranging from, the overwhelming mind fuckery of how many candles are on your birthday cake to recurring hot flashes that make us feel like we actually are melting. Add in the regular pressures of showing up for daily life in a world that's full of political turmoil and traffic jams, and not to mention the pressure, the cultural pressure of looking like a 27-year-old yogini. And basically the result can be a whole host of companions, kind of like the seven dwarves, except much less loyal and productive. They're more like cranky, frazzled, angry, weepy, testy, irritable, and grouchy, and they can make life feel like anything but audacious. Fortunately, there are lots of things that we can do to send those characters back to the minds and out of the way of our showing up to be our most present and audacious selves. So I'm curious if you wanted to post into the chat box if you have anything that you're most apprehensive about with regard to aging or midlife in general, and we can talk about that. So feel free to pop it in there. So I like to say that aging itself is inevitable. We want to age, right? I mean, that's the name of the game. We want to continue to be on the planet. But feeling old is entirely optional. That part is in our minds. It's all about a mindset. One of the joys of midlife is really the opportunity to discover or rediscover our authentic selves, and to keep in mind that aging is not a problem that needs to be solved. It's really a privilege. I'm sure that at this point in our lives, we all have people who aren't getting to age anymore, people we've lost. So I like to think that I'm aging not only in honor of myself, but in honor of those people who didn't get to age, and keeping in mind that it is a privilege. Also, one of my massive pet peeves is there really is no such thing as anti-aging. I can't stand when things are marketed to us as anti-aging. There's no such thing, as I said, but there are multiple ways to age awesomely and audaciously. So I'm going to share some of my favorite strategies and tips so you can learn how to move forward feeling great with energy, clarity, and delight. So step one is to flip your focus and your inner script. So where you may have heard this before, but where your attention goes is where your energy flows. So start redirecting that energy by changing the lens that you're looking through. Kind of like when you're going to get glasses and they're saying, can you see better with A or B? You can actually change the lens so you can just start to see more clearly. There is a lot of negative cultural programming out there about women who are over 45, about what life is supposed to be like for women over 45, and it can totally mess with our heads. But at the end of the day, you're the author of your own story, and you get to control your own narrative. You don't have to buy into that stuff. You might be aging, but that doesn't have to mean that you're too old, unattractive, uninteresting, or fill in the blank to do things that are meaningful, engaging, and fun and fantastic. Aging doesn't have to mean despair or decline. So I like to tell people to stop shoulding all over themselves and start looking for some of the negative thought clusters that are bringing you down. And when you find them, to reframe them into more positive thoughts that feel just as true or truer, instead of ones that make you feel like you're in some version of a shame spiral. So I'm over the effing hill can be turned into something like, I wouldn't trade my life's experience for anything. I'm so grateful I've gotten to go through all of these tribulations, all of these difficulties, because they've made me who I am. So changing the story, flipping the script. With age, also, here's one. With age comes more perspective, more experience, less FOMO, I find, and more peace, which is all rather delightful. So don't buy into stories with descriptors like over the hill. And even when you're hanging around with your girlfriends and, we all sort of get together and start age bashing. And, it's fine to commiserate about, oh my God, I'm having these hot flashes, or, oh my God, nobody told me this was going to happen, or my hair is changing, or etc. However, it's also important to then step in and say, okay, and yes, and we get to age. So I'm just also wondering if any of you have some of the negative stories or cultural myths that you find yourself buying into. So that kind of goes along with the first questions. What are you apprehensive about? And I'm wondering if sometimes when you talk about the things that you're apprehensive about, you can recognize that some of those things really are stories that we've been told to anticipate or told that we're going to have to deal with. So if you have any in there, pop them in. And if not, I have a couple we can talk about at the end if we have time.
Lisa, we do have one that's talking about retiring and, reframing what we've done for the whole career and walking away from that and reframing it with the money and self-space to do something else. Do you have any thoughts on that transition?
Yeah, well, I think especially if you're retiring after a long career, it's important to take some time to grieve that. I mean, that's been an identity of who you were for such a long time. And that is sometimes part of that meltdown. Really, that transformation, that identity meltdown that happens at midlife can happen at any age when you're having something that is directly impacting how you perceive yourself. So taking some time to really to allow that, and then while you're in the meltdown, like giving yourself the liminal space to just be while while you take some time and stay open for what wants to happen, because you might, I think this is, if this is what you're saying in this question, that you're concerned about what's going to happen when it's done. I think taking some time and space instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to figure it all out right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was mine. And some of it, it's absolutely that. I'm kind of a retirement dropout at this point. So I actually didn't jump out of the nest like I was, it didn't stick, as some people have said. So I think it's, it's just changing your, kind of giving yourself permission to, for me, it's like giving myself permission even to just to let go and feel the fear. It's really fear.
Sure, that makes total sense. And I think you're right, feeling it, because the more you push it away, the more it's going to come back to bite you on the butt.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to just lean into it a little bit and say, I'm afraid. I don't know what's going to happen. There's that meltdown that I'm talking about. Within my coaching, I like to say there's 4 stages. And that first one is meltdown. The next one is the dreaming and scheming. It's really a reforming. So when a caterpillar is in a cocoon, before it comes out, it has to reform into the butterfly. And it is reforming. It's putting itself back together with a pile of like DNA goop that it melts down into. And so when you're in the meltdown, even though you really want to be in the dreaming and scheming, sometimes you're not fully there yet. And when you're resisting the melting part, it just kind of makes it more uncomfortable. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We hate it. We want to make it stop.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Good
yes,
luck.
Thank you.
That.
And I look forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank you. So this is one of my favorite slides, favorite quotes. I love Eleanor Roosevelt, but it's true. We can't control what anybody else thinks, but we can avoid letting ourselves be controlled by what others think. That part is on us. And it's easy to say. It's more about recognizing when that's going on, when you recognize that that's what's happening, that you're really worried about what everybody else is going to think. It doesn't matter. It only matters what you think. So that is that. Step 2 is check your attitude. And I also love this quote from Anne Frank, but this is one of my favorite tools for creating an audacious midlife, because the more engaged you are in your life, the happier and more fulfilled you're going to be at any age, at every age. So intentionally start looking for things that increase your level of joy, and while actively avoiding negativity and toxicity. And that can even be negative people, or people who feel toxic, about just creating some boundaries around that. And I'm saying just because it's not always that easy, but learning how to create some space so that you're not impacted, or maybe just it's space in your head from the vibe. Through our attitudes, we have the ability to show up however we want at any point in our lives. And that power of possibility I find to be totally empowering. Mindset is everything. And so one of the mantras of midlife, of aging in general, is stay curious. Stay curious, change the story. You can add more meaning to your life through a number of ways, volunteer work, a spiritual practice, conscious compassion and gratitude. You can learn Spanish, learn the banjo, take up photography, seek out people and experiences, any of those things. And I also want to encourage you to be aware of what we in the coaching industry like to call compare and despair. Social media can really taunt us and feed into those feelings of, oh, how come they've got this perfect life and I don't have that? If you feel triggered on social media by compare and despair, then that's really an invitation to possibly hop off or to stop following people that trigger that in you. Or if there are people that are, you can't necessarily stop following your sister-in-law, but you can mute her. You don't have to see every single thing that comes up. And make a point of following people who actually inspire you instead of bring you down. So I have a couple of little exercises that I like to use to help change your mindset. And this one is called Remember Who You Are. And you can write it down in a journal or anywhere, but write down what you've accomplished in your life so far, not just the big things. And you write it all down, even little things. I've put here traumas you've survived, people you've loved, friends you've rescued, etc. I like plants you've managed not to kill. I have one that I love, and every time I look at it, it reminds me like, oh, right, I do have a little bit of a green thumb for this guy anyway. So just seeing it all in black and white can really be impactful.
Lisa, Wendy has asked a question, which is how do we uncover our story? And this seems like a great start. Are there other aspects to this that you might add to uncovering our story?
Well, when you're talking about your story, you mean the story of Remember Who You Are, or you mean negative thoughts that you feel like are impacting you?
Oh, Wendy, maybe you can add to that if you feel comfortable.
Because they're a little bit different.
Yeah.
Should I unmute or? Oh.
No, you did.
I guess I was meaning kind of your life story and both where you're from and also how it's shifting as you're coming to midwife. If there's like a new story emerging, how to get the themes to come out and kind of fine tune and.
Yeah. Well, I think that sometimes, again, writing things down can really help you see it, because it's all in your head and you want to get it out of your head and onto paper. And there's so many ways you can do that. I mean, I went through an exercise a couple of years ago where I tried to remember things that happened in every year of my life, even if I couldn't remember them, things that, that were told that happened to me. Like when my sister was born and I was 3, I don't remember that, but it was impactful. And I just tried to write down something. So I kind of had a timeline. And it's so great to go back. That's one way that you do remember some of the things that can help you remember who you are. And their themes start to emerge as you get it out of your head and put it down. Another thing you can do, another fun exercise, is actually ask 5 or 10 people in your life, who am I to you? Like if you had to describe me in 5 words, what would you say? And what is your most favorite memory of us together? Because you might not remember what they remember. I mean, that happens all the time. And so that can be really helpful too, because who knows what it is, but as you get it out and put it in front of you, themes typically do emerge. And that can help you go, oh gosh, this is clearly a value for me, or this is something that I've enjoyed doing. I want to make sure that I bring that with me into this next phase. So hopefully that answers your question, Wendy.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. So this is one exercise. I have another exercise I want to share with you too. And this one is in the book, and it's about creating a stop doing list, because we're all so big on to-do lists, but sometimes it's important to put things on that maybe you don't want to do anymore. And again, seeing them in black and white can be really helpful. So letting fear keep you stuck, overthinking every damn thing, saying no all the time. For instance, like I've worked with people who've set up a say yes challenge for 30 days where they're just going to stop saying no. They're going to say yes, if not to every single thing that comes upon, that crosses their path, but to something that makes them feel uncomfortable every day. So things that you can stop doing. So I don't know if you guys have anything that you would want to add in that chat box, which I just realized I can't really see, but Janet can see it, so that's good. But anything that you want to add that you might think that you want to stop doing. And that can be just as empowering as to do. And to do sometimes just adds to the pressure. So stop doing is freeing, feels more free, more like freedom. So step 3, and this is a huge one, is about creating a new relationship with stress, because we're not going to be able to eliminate stress entirely, and our bodies are wired to cope with stressful events, and typically that happens through a jolt of cortisol It activates what's called our sympathetic nervous systems, and it puts us into flight or flee mode. And clearly that was essential 100 million years ago when we were hiding from wild animals or, any number of things we were doing to survive. But in modern times, our bodies perceive stressful events as everything from traffic and too many emails and forgetting something at the grocery store to parenting, bill paying, caregiving. And what happens is that cortisol that used to come in a jolt that would help us run is now like on a near constant drip. And it's taking a toll on our adrenal systems and our overall health. And it's really hard to feel audacious when you're overtired, overwhelmed, and just plain over it. So since we're not going to be able to entirely eliminate stress from our lives, we can create a new relationship with it. So what I like to do is think of things that help trigger the opposite, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and relax, rest and digest. So it can be anything from taking walks, practicing yoga, even a few minutes a day of meditation. Spending time in nature is a big one. Nature is actually, they have done studies to find that when you are out in nature, that immediately does help trigger your parasympathetic nervous system, even just sitting out on your back porch and listening to the birds. Another thing that is one of my favorite ones is taking 3 intentional deep breaths and actually putting my hands on my heart. That alone, just that feeling, helps trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. If you try it, it actually does feel comforting. And then taking 3 intentional deep breaths. And also other things like doing a digital detox for one day during the weekend, or reading at night instead of scrolling through your phone and looking at Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Setting a peaceful morning routine, all of those things. So anything you can do to start creating that new relationship with stress by inviting in your parasympathetic nervous system is great. And I'm curious about what are some of the things that you guys do to relieve stress. And
we have some good answers in here, Lisa, including crafting and smoking a joint and walking, some good meditation and yoga. I also added that when I'm walking my dog, I like to try and pay attention to what she's paying attention to, which is like super micro, like sniffing the leaves, and that's really taking that.
Because that brings you right into the now and takes you out of your head. If you're watching what your dog is going to do, you have no idea what your dog is going to do. And so you're being present. You're following that. I've never heard that one. That is a great one. I love that. Even if you're not a yoga, you're not into practicing yoga, there's one yoga pose that I love for parasympathetic, which is legs up the wall. And essentially that just means scooting your butt up to a wall and putting your legs straight up like the letter L, and then taking some breathing. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a game changer. And if you've ever taken a yoga class, we all know that the best part about the yoga class is Shavasana at the end. And that is another yin pose, which does trigger that parasympathetic. So all good stuff. Yes, so moving on, as soon as I can find the button, there it is. Okay, so the next one is hormones. And why is that? Here it is. Okay, sorry. So a huge contributor to the shifting tides of midlife is hormones. So think of your hormones like a big symphony. So if one hormone falls out of sync, then the others are kind of playing catch up, and they're improvising and they're trying to stay in tune. So getting your levels of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone checked can provide a ton of information about what's going on with your body, and same with your thyroid hormones. And I'm going to just tell you a little anecdotal story, which is I have a friend whose doctor kept telling her that she didn't need to do that. He was her general GP, and he just kept saying, well, I'll test him for you, but I don't really, I don't think it's going to tell us anything different. But she was really suffering. She was having migraines, she was having insomnia, just lots of stuff. So I finally convinced her to see a naturopath, because I'm a huge proponent. I love my naturopath. And she did. And she got her results back. And essentially, her testosterone levels weren't just low, they were non-existent. She had none. Her estrogen and progesterone were also very low. She started taking some hormones, some natural like compounded hormones. And within 2 weeks, she said she felt like a completely different person. And so I just want to say that if you feel like something's off, trust yourself. And if your doctor doesn't want to get your hormones checked, then maybe find somebody who does and find out what's out there. So trusting yourself is really important. According to the Mayo Clinic doctors, declining estrogen and progesterone levels can interfere with your sleep. They can make your moods vacillate. They can reduce your energy levels. And of course, there's hot flashes and night sweats. It can also cause memory loss, anxiety, weight gain, and decreased interest in the things you used to enjoy. And again, everyone's different. There's something called bio-individuality. So anecdotally, what might work for me might not work for you. So it's really, again, about staying curious and looking for what works for you and really trusting yourself to see. And because ultimately we're the ones that are the only ones who have the full technicolor experience of what it means to be us. So we're just so trained to go and nod and say, oh, okay, I guess it's all in my head. It's not in your head. You can get your hormones checked, truly. Any questions? Okay, moving on to step 5, which is go deeper. So the more connected we are, the more joy we can feel. And I'm not just talking about connected to others. I'm also talking about connected to ourselves and connected to something bigger than all of us. So there's something about the dawning existential realization that our lives here on earth have actual expiration dates. And that can create a yearning for more meaning and purpose in our middle years. We start to question relationships, career choices, decisions we've made in the past, and things like becoming an empty nester or going through a divorce or retiring. All of those things can really leave us feeling devoid of direction and sad. So midlife can be an invitation to explore ways of going deeper through spirituality, meditation, any activity that can give us a renewed sense of purpose, or make us feel more connected to ourselves or to others. And a good therapist or life coach doesn't hurt either if you feel stuck in this area, because sometimes it's really about digging through layers of stuff to help recognize where you want to feel more connected. So because shining a light on that stuff that's keeping us stuck can help resolve it in ways that really leave you with a greater sense of connection to yourself and to the bigger picture.
Lisa, I think that there's a really interesting conversation here. One got provoked by Teresa, who said that attending events with people I don't want to be around is something that she would stop doing. And I know that in the book, in the 3 C's of midlife, you highlight something that really caught my attention, which is sometimes how we might outgrow groups and activities that used to be places where we found support and connection, which really does complicate matters, particularly as we're trying to go deeper and build community. So could you maybe talk a little bit to that complication?
Absolutely. So that is true. We do outgrow people sometimes, and sometimes that's sad and sometimes it isn't. But you don't have to go to activities where there are people that you don't want to spend time with. You can look at it a number of different ways. So you can, say it's a family gathering and you really feel like, well, I kind of have an obligation to go. So you don't have to, but you're choosing to do it because it's part of your value system. And within that, if you're choosing to do something that feels like it's draining, what are the things that you can do to help make sure that you don't drain, that your energy doesn't get drained? How can you protect yourself? And that can be anything from saying you're only going to go for 20 minutes, you're going to take breaks, you're going to bring somebody with you that always has your back, that's going to help steer you around. There's lots of choices that you have. But if it's something where you feel an obligation to go, it's a work thing or a family thing, then remind yourself that the reasons why you're doing it. Because staying in the resentment, oh God, I have to do this, just feels awful. So just remember how it fits into your values and that it's a choice and you're choosing it, and how can you protect yourself. And then the flip side of it is maybe it's something that you really don't want to do and you really don't have to do it. And you know what? Your friends or some people might be annoyed, like, oh, she never comes out anymore, whatever. Ultimately, it's like Eleanor Roosevelt said, that's what they think. you are not responsible for dedicating a lot of your energy to making sure that everybody else feels okay. As women, we do this all the time. We're pleasers. It's bring it back. What works for you and what, there's a woman named Byron Katie in California, and whom I love, and she does something called The Work, which is all about examining your thoughts. But she has this thing, there's 3 kinds of business in the world: my business, your business, and God's business. And when you're feeling stressed, you're not in your business. You're either in God's business, which could be traffic jams, earthquakes, pandemics, or you're in somebody else's business. And if you're worrying what other people are thinking of you because you're not showing up at an event, you're definitely not in your business. So I hope that helps answer that question. And we're going to move on to step 6, which is another fun one, which is remember to play. And I don't know exactly how old we are when we seem to forget that playing is important and we start to take everything so dang seriously. But playing is important at every age. So as adults, the majority of us have forgotten how to play. And I'm not just talking about like sports or board games. I'm talking about the little, like almost frivolous things that contribute to us having a more positive outlook and just better well-being. I'm talking about just plain having fun. So listening to music again and singing at the top of our lungs, petting animals, whether they're yours or somebody else's, taking up a new hobby. And of course, the list is endless. Learning how to play bridge or mahjong, making jam, blowing bubbles, bowling, belly dancing. I mean, synchronized swimming, there's a million options. You can enlist a friend, you can do it on your own. Keep in mind that the primary goal is pleasure. It's all about pleasure. So I'd be curious about what some of your favorite forms of play are. How do you play? What do you do that feels like play? And Janet,
Natalia, I want to come to your kitchen and join your dance party when you're cleaning up. But I also relate very strongly to Yasmin, who says playing more is on my list, but I've almost forgotten how. Do you have any thoughts on how we could provoke our memory on how to be playful again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a couple different ways. One thing that I've heard people do that can be a fun activity is to literally like take yourself, I don't know, if I was in Seattle, maybe I'd take myself to Pike Place Market without any agenda whatsoever. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to literally kind of stand on the corner of, okay, which direction is pulling me? I'm going to go that way. I'm going to go this way. And just through curiosity, I think, is how you find play. Because again, everyone's different. So just being curious and noticing when we're trying to hold ourselves back, when we're trying to be good, when we're shoulding ourselves. Although I did just notice that there's a verb that should always be part of our lives. Well, I guess in this case, I'm going to allow that should. But noticing when you're holding yourself back, when you're shoulding on yourself, and just stay curious. I think curiosity would be the way. And another thing that you could do is a vision board. You could go flip through magazines, pull bunches of stuff out, and notice what's appealing to you, what feels fun. And sometimes a theme kind of emerges, kind of like with the exercise of who are you. Sometimes when you get it out of your head and put it down in front of you in living color, a theme will emerge. And yeah, Natalia, I want to come to your dance parties too. For sure. In fact, dance parties is on one of my few, it's on another slide coming up because that's one of my favorite ways to move it, but we're not there yet. We're going up to step 7, which is to crowd in more veggies and crowd out the junk. So while a big, huge part of healthy aging rests in your attitude and mindset, an equally large piece is directly impacted by diet and lifestyle choices. So I like to look at it as, you don't have to take care of yourself, but you get to take care of yourself. So there's kind of a shift there. So with that in mind, I'm going to echo what you already know, which is essentially eat more vegetables. Eat more vegetables. More veggies means more antioxidants, fiber, vitamins, and minerals, which are the good guys. And crowding more veggies into your diet leaves less room for foods that contribute to what's known as chronic or silent inflammation. And that's like processed sugars and refined foods and simple white carbs. And those are the things. And the whole idea as we age is we want to keep that inflammation down to a dull roar because it's essential to staying vibrant and healthy as we age. So if leafy greens, if you're going to start with leafy greens, try adding them into one or more of your meals every day. So for instance, if you like to scramble eggs for breakfast, maybe try sauteing a little bit of rainbow chard. So rainbow chard is one of those ones you probably skip over in the grocery store all the time. It's so beautiful though. It's got these beautiful stems and they don't really have a strong flavor, but they definitely add more bulk and more fiber and more antioxidants in, and they do taste good. So you can saute the stems in with a little bit of onion and your scrambled eggs and add the greens, and it's so yummy. A little bit of sprinkled cheese on top, so good. You can also add some kale or spinach or chard into your morning smoothie. If you're having roast chicken or baked salmon for dinner, you can open a bag of those power greens and saute them in a little bit of olive oil or butter and garlic and salt. Anything you can do to amp up the greens. Oh, another one, if you're making soup, you can just sort of like get some collard greens and sort of slice them into ribbons and put them in, add those in. Those are really, really good for you. And when you're eating out, maybe just throw some arugula into your salad at the salad bar, or order a side of greens to go with what you have. So you're crowding in the good stuff so that there's less room for the yucky stuff. And this is a challenge that I love. So next time you're at the grocery store or the farmer's market, look for vegetables that don't normally make it into your basket. So some ideas might include fennel that you can roast up. You can roast with red peppers and potatoes, or you can thinly slice and add it to your salads. Or maybe endive or jicama for dipping into hummus, or zucchini or butternut squash that can be spiraled into noodles. And sometimes you can get them already spiraled at the grocery store, and that you just want to heat up ever so briefly and add maybe some pesto or something, and they're delicious. Maybe some celery root to chop and steam and add to mashed potatoes or pureed soups. Look for things that you don't normally have. So even if you were to just add in one thing every week, maybe it's leeks. Maybe you don't typically buy leeks, but you're going to check out leeks. And if you bring it home and you Google, say, simple recipe leeks, simple recipe fennel, whatever it is, you're going to get so many hits. And as long as you include that word simple or simple and easy, it'll be much less overwhelming, and it'll be fun. Trust me, it's fun. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You won't like it and you won't do that again. So anything you can do to, again, stay curious, add in the good guys, and it's one of my favorite challenges. So any questions here? Okay, I'm moving on to step 8. This is a big one. Make sleep a priority. Sleep is important for all of us, but it's especially important as we age, because when we're sleeping, that's when our cells go into build and repair mode, and that's essential for feeling and looking healthy and audacious. And looking and feeling and in fact, that is the repair mode, that's real. We want to have as much of that as we can. So if you're skimping on sleep in favor of being more productive in some way, then I encourage you to cut it out immediately. It's not working for you, it's working against you. But more likely what's happening is you're part of the growing epidemic of people who have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. I'm definitely in that category. Staying asleep is my thing. So in that case, I recommend amping up your sleep hygiene protocols. So it includes keeping your bedroom cool and dark, going to bed at a mostly consistent time every night. That's a really big one. So it's like, instead of staying up just to watch 2 more episodes of Ted Lasso, go to bed and Ted Lasso is going to be there for you in the morning. It also means putting your phone away 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. So try reading instead. You can check Facebook and Twitter in the morning. But really, another thing, it can be hard if you have a partner where there's a television in the bedroom. That can be really difficult. That's not particularly helpful with sleep hygiene. And so anything you can do to encourage that partner to turn that off, or to watch TV in a different room, at least until you fall asleep, or watch on their iPad with earplugs in, anything. But sleep hygiene is a big one. I have lots of other recommendations for insomnia on my website, and I'm also happy to talk about that anytime. It's for sure a thing for me. Anybody have any questions here? Okay.
Nothing's coming up on the chat, but Lisa, you did mention staying asleep is a challenge, and you had some great ideas on how we actually went to sleep in the first place. But what if you do wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning?
which truly is my issue. So there are lots of things you can do, but I'm going to tell you what my favorite one is that I learned from my doctor at Seattle Sleep Medicine Clinic when I saw her a few years ago. And it seems almost counterintuitive, but I swear to you, this works, especially if you are in the habit of waking up every night in the middle of the night and then having a hard time falling back asleep. So your brain, even though you're waking up, you might not feel stressed. Like say you get up to go to the bathroom and you come back to bed and you're so tired. Like for me, I would be so tired and I would think, I'm definitely going to fall back asleep. I'm exhausted. And then 20 minutes, 40 minutes later, I wouldn't really be asleep. I would just kind of be in limbo. So what my doctor told me was that my brain had started to rewire to be in that fight or flight, to be in that cortisol space. So it was about tricking my brain from doing that. So she said, even though phones in a bedroom are not necessarily the best place, I would keep mine in there and I would have it queued up to either a book on Audible or a podcast or something. And I pop my headphones in and I would listen. And she said, the more engaging it is, the better, because you're tricking your brain. You're tricking your brain into not following that trail of, I'm going to go back to sleep any minute, which clearly wasn't working. And I'll be damned if that didn't work and doesn't continue to work when I need it. So yeah, isn't that funny? The more interesting, the better. And you can set the timer, like if you do use Audible, you can set the timer for 10 minutes. Sometimes a meditation is a good one too, but you just want to get your brain switched. You want to switch the roads. So that's my favorite one. But there are lots of others. And again, if you're interested, we can certainly talk about that. But in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going because we only have 2 more. So step 9, get moving. You already know the importance of exercise, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but I will say that you don't have to be competing in triathlons or doing what this gal's doing, which is running with her legs in the air, or doing the world's hardest spin class to help you age audaciously. If you want to, knock yourself out, but you don't have to. Even just taking walks around the block, walking, just increasing your walking is huge. And like Natalia having a dance party in your kitchen, that totally counts. I did that throughout the pandemic, and it was hugely helpful to me. It helped me feel like I was moving my body, but it also it was play. It was fun. It was checking a bunch of boxes. So moving your body supports aging on a cellular level, and it helps your brain work better. It helps keep you flexible and energized, and it increases your feel-good hormones, which of course we all want to do. On the flip side, inactivity can be linked to depression, not to mention cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, all the things. So the most important thing here is to find an activity that you enjoy so you're motivated to keep doing it. Find a buddy, download some podcasts. Like I used to do this thing with Audible where I would I'd download a book and I would only allow myself to listen to it if I was walking or exercising in some way. So it's like, even I was dying to know what was going to happen, but it wasn't until I was, in motion that I would allow myself to listen. So that was kind of a good little incentive one. So anything you need to do to get your booty moving is important. And step 10, stay hydrated. My daughter says add a straw. It makes drinking water more fun. So I've been doing that. But being properly hydrated is important for so many reasons. More water can help flush out waste and toxins and bacteria. It can prevent headaches. It can ease joint pain, decrease stress, aid weight loss, promote clearer thinking, make your skin glow, and so many more things. And many of us are in the habit of drinking too many things that actually dehydrate us, like coffee and tea, anything with caffeine. So in fact, by the time you experience the sensation of thirst, you're already on your way to being dehydrated. So experts typically recommend at least 60 ounces a day, but it can feel hard to keep track. So one thing that you can do is you can have a jar like this or a water bottle, and you can put 4 rubber bands around it. And every time you finish drinking it, put 1 rubber band up and then fill it up again. Another one that I like to do is beginning every day with 16 to 20 ounces of water. So when I come downstairs, after I pee, I just fill up the water, drink, kind of gulp the water. So I know that I'm already on the way to being hydrated for the day. It's a good way to get a head start. So these are kind of like the 3 things I want to tell you before you before you start to create your roadmap, which is pay attention and stay curious and trust yourself. Because ultimately, how do you have the life you want? It's by being awake in the life that you're in, paying attention and staying curious. Even if you aren't exactly where you want to be yet, have faith in the way forward. And even when you can't see it, trust yourself, trust yourself. Continue to shape what you do to reflect your skills, your personality, your talents, and also be open to trying new things. Be audacious in that way. Always, to be audacious, to feel audacious, always have something new and challenging in your life. And especially if it's in service to people or things that you care about. And yeah, so that's kind of what I got for you. Those are my 10 favorite steps in creating that roadmap. And certainly there's more in my book, in Midlife No Crisis, which you can find on Amazon. You can go to my website and get it that way as well. And sign up for my mailing list, because that way you'll know when I'm doing more events and workshops. I am putting together a course that will focus on aging audaciously. And I often get new and interesting products. I just actually put one up on my Instagram, which is for insomnia. It's this great CBD tincture, because I'm getting sent things all the time, but I only share things that are really awesome. So sign up and follow me, and I will keep you in the loop. Thank you so much for attending today. And now maybe I can see the, you know what, if I stop sharing my screen, I'll be able to see the chat box. So hold on a second.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was chock full of some really great ideas. And what I found in your narrative was that while there's steps to do, there was sort of a gamification of them all, and you made them all sound like fun to take on, which helps flip that mindset in the first instance. I do encourage anyone to post more questions in the chat. But meanwhile, I think one of the things that struck me was, there's so many powerful steps that it can be challenging to go from day one to take them all on. So do you have a strategy for choosing one to maybe start and then build, or, manage that
Yes.
expectation of ourselves?
And you're so right, Janet. Thanks for pointing that out, because if you do try to take them all on at once, what's going to happen is you're just going to feel overwhelmed, and you're probably going to end up doing none or less. So I think that's a great point. I think it would be different. I would say, look at those 10 steps and decide which one really speaks to you. And if you're not sure, then start with the easiest one, like maybe staying hydrated or, or focusing on your sleep, the thing that is going to call to you. And sometimes you can do 2 at once. You could certainly work on staying hydrated and adding play into your life, but see which calls to you, and pay it like I said at the end, it's like, pay attention, stay curious, and trust yourself. That's kind of the overarching theme for all of these, because some of this work is hard. It's hard to go try to figure out, God, what are the thoughts that I'm buying into that that are keeping me stuck? What are some of those negative beliefs? I will say that one way to figure out when a negative belief is holding you back, the red flag on that is noticing if you feel crappy, like if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling, that's like a red flag to notice that somewhere behind that feeling is a thought that got you to that feeling. It's essentially, the way it works is that there's a circumstance which informs our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings impact our actions. And this is something that I do with all my coaching clients, is explain how that works, and how we can't always change a circumstance like aging, but we can change our thoughts around it, which will impact how we feel. So noticing, if there's something, but again, that's like paying attention. That's in the pay attention category for sure. So, but to answer your question, Janet, yes, small steps will help you avoid overwhelm, and pick the 1 or 2 that really feel the most resonant for you, and then add more in.
And then I think, so there's a few questions just in terms of links and steps and copies of the steps posted. So a recording will be posted on the Revel 11 website later today. You can find this on Facebook too. It's being streamed Facebook Live. And I think that the list of steps posted will also be part of the wrap up. So I'm sure that will be something that we can share. I think lastly, one of the things that I know Joni has a very strong understanding of the power of self-compassion. and, you know, how destructive our inner dialogues can be. So maybe just to follow up that, you know, there's small steps, but, you know, do you have any top tips on how we can catch ourselves in those negative stories as we start to beat ourselves up for not doing something, or for, and redirect them maybe a little bit more constructively until they finally become less prevalent in our lives?
Well, self-compassion is huge. I talk about that, I think, a lot in my book, and self-compassion is something that we could all really benefit from increasing in our lives. There's a woman named Kristen Neff who literally wrote the book on self-compassion. I would check her out, and Brené Brown talks a lot about that as well. But talking to ourselves negatively is something that we all do it, and it's funny. We say things to ourselves in our minds that we would never say to another person in real life. I tell this story about how I was driving. I was trying to find a parking space somewhere, and I saw one, but I thought I could maybe get one closer. So I was going around the block, and then I lost the one, and I was like, "Oh my God, Lisa, you're such a fucking idiot!" And then I laughed, like I caught myself. I busted myself doing it, and then I was able to turn it around and go, "Okay, honey, you're not an idiot. That was severe. You're human. You thought you could get a better spot. You didn't. It's okay. We don't, you know, it's just amazing how hard we are on ourselves." So yeah, I'm all for it. I think Joni is correct. And bringing in self-compassion whenever you can. And I actually think too, that again, when you're feeling low and depressed and beating yourself up, noticing what you're saying to yourself in your mind, and cushioning that and turning it around and say, "Oh my gosh, listen to me. That's not true. I'm being so hard on myself. I don't need to be. I'm human."
Absolutely. So Vanessa was just wanting to check what the name of the author was, and I think that was Kristen Neff. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But I will just personally do a little plug for this, because it's full of fantastic quotes and references, and so you'll get the author's names and a lot of other redirected references on top of Lisa's great advice. And Lisa, we can buy this on Amazon and on your website. Is that correct?
Correct. And it really, any bookstore, if you like to shop at small bookstores, you can ask them to order it for you, and they will.
Perfect. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
sure. But yes, do come follow me. Follow me on social media. I'm having the most fun on Instagram for sure. And I love Facebook. I'm still not totally on the Twitter tip yet, but you never know.
Excellent. That is wonderful. Well, I do encourage people to just do a quick look in the chat, because there's some amazing top tips for how we uphold some of these guidance, including some veggie boxes. I know I also have a veggie box, which allows me to be surprised and understand what on earth I should do with certain fruits and veggies that I wouldn't otherwise buy. And then also some wonderful retirement tips of creating your own salary and paying you to start creating that space and reframing your life.
I'm also looking at some of these, Jana, you had said one of the things that you're most apprehensive about is staying relevant and not becoming career obsolete. You know, I think that sometimes that whole relevant thing is all in our heads. It's like the more we are engaged in our lives, the more the happier we feel. Like when we show up, that's it catches. Like you want to be around people who are feeling full of life and not worrying about what others think. And relevance is that is, again, it's kind of putting it into the other category of what are they going to think of me? Like all you can do is show up in your integrity and continue to do the best job that you can do, and to stay audacious by challenging yourself to learn new things and to put yourself out there. But as far as being relevant is concerned, that's putting definitely your energy into not your business. That makes sense.
Thank you for that. And actually, you know, not to one of the things that has been fun, and I think it speaks to another participant's curiosity, is just thinking about the themes of relevance in each decade of my life. And the relevance isn't necessarily to be a sort of technology savvy, it's to bring what the wisdom and the experience of all those things that we've experienced to date then can contribute to the workplace. And that, as I read a great analysis the other day that was about the importance of our emotional intelligence and some of that a softer skill that we do often negate the value of, but actually is becoming more and more important. Yeah. So, which is exciting.
I just want to also address, because a couple people were talking about, well, they're talking about pain and
Yes.
and pains. So that is definitely directly impacted by diet and lifestyle. So sometimes some of those pains, like even arthritis, can be impacted by our diet, and because we want to tone down that inflammation. So that's one way. But worrying about the pain before it's happening is definitely a waste of your time. When you get to a place, if it's impacting your quality of life, then for sure finding some kind of provider that can help you with it. But worrying that as we age, it's all going to be in decline is spending your time now worrying about something that's not happening yet. So I would definitely not focus on that too much. Yeah, there are always going to be aches and pains, right? And they're definitely going to be different. Then that's one of the things about aging that we can't necessarily change, but tuning down the inflammation is one. And then somebody else said, Angie, I'm wondering if when I'm 50, I'll finally feel like an adult. No, probably not.
But you'll enjoy it. You'll really enjoy it more.
There's something about aging where you look in the mirror and you're like, wait, who was that again? Like, I'm your mom. You're 23, but you're like, wait, I don't know her. So it's this funny thing, and time is so squishy. We're all the ages we've ever been. And I don't necessarily, you're going to feel like a grown up. Sometimes I have to be like, oh, wait, I'm the mom. I'm the mom. Like, I remember having to say that to myself when my kids were little, being like, they're the kids. I'm the mom. I'm the grown up. I'm not the kid. I'm not a teenager. Not like I had forgotten, but just like, how did I get to be the mom? I'm the mom. Like, I'm a kid, but I'm not. Anyway, so I think it's a little bit of a mind game. And I'm just looking at, so Wendy, we might be out of time. We got like one more minute, right?
If there's one other comment, I really appreciate you picking up on the pain, because there's a couple of different questions about that. If there's one other one that you feel is speaking to you, please address it. Otherwise, we'll just wrap up with some other opportunities for the Revel 11 community to continue to pay attention and stay curious and trust ourselves.